Now when Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king, behold, there came wise men from the east to Jerusalem, saying, Where is he that is born King of the Jews? For we have seen his star in the east and are come to worship him. When Herod the king had heard these things, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. And when he had gathered all the priests and scribes of the people together, he demanded of them where Christ should be born. And they said unto him, In Bethlehem of Judah. For thus it is written by the prophet, And thou, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, art not least among the princes of Judah, for out of thee shall come a governor that shall rule my people Israel. Then Herod, when he had privily called the wise men, inquired of them diligently what time the star appeared. And he sent them to Bethlehem and said, Go and search diligently for the young child, and when ye have found him, bring me word again, that I may come and worship him also. When they had heard the king, they departed. And lo, the star which they saw in the east went before them, till it came and stood over where the young child was. When they saw the star, they rejoiced with exceeding great joy. And when they were come into the house, they saw the young child with Mary his mother, and fell down and worshipped him. And when they had opened their treasures, they presented unto him gifts, gold and frankincense and myrrh. And being warned of God in a dream that they should not return to Herod, they departed into their own country another way. We all think we know this story. At the moment Jesus is born, a brilliant new star appears in the heavens, and everybody sees it, including 3 Eastern wise men, Gaspar, Melchior, and Balthazar, astronomers who embark on a long journey which follows the track of the star all the way. At some unspecified time, which could be as much as 2 years later, the wise men get to Jerusalem, the capital of Herod the Great, the Roman-appointed king of the Jews. And they want to know where the newborn king is. Nobody seems to have any idea what these Eastern exotics, who seem somehow to include a sub-Saharan African among their number, are talking about. Even with an unfamiliar star blazing in the night sky for the past 2 years. And anyway, the people of Jerusalem are all scared witless that King Herod will hear about the strangers and punish anyone who assists them. Well, Herod does hear about all this commotion, but the first thing he does is to summon his own wise men and ask them where the only king expected by the Jews, of which Herod is aware, the Messiah, will be born. Herod's aim, of course, as we learn later in the story, is to have the wise men, or magi, find out where the child is for him so that he can kill it. This same Herod had killed all but 3 of his own sons by the time of his death, leading Herod's friend, the Roman Emperor Augustus, to quip that he'd rather be Herod's pig, Hus, than his son, Huias, because it was safer. The Jewish scholars reply that, according to prophecy, the Messiah will be born in Bethlehem. Herod summons the wise men to an audience and learns from them when the star first appeared, and then he sends them to Bethlehem with a request that they return and tell him the child's location so that he can go to honor the next king in person. When the wise men leave Herod, they see the star again and follow it to the exact spot in Bethlehem where the Christ child is, with Mary and Joseph there with him. The wise men enter the house. The stable and manger are somehow no longer the little family's refuge, and present the child with gifts: gold for kingship, frankincense for godhood, and myrrh for embalming, king and God and sacrifice, in the words of this morning's hymn. Then, having received a warning from God in a dream, the wise men depart for home without returning to Herod. Where to begin? Okay, first, we don't know how many wise men there were, nor we only know that they brought 3 different gifts. Nor do we know any of their names, nor their places of origin. The practice of making one of the wise men in nativity sets an African reflects a medieval tradition that each wise man came from a different continent of the known world at the time. One from Europe, one from Asia, and one from Africa. Then many scholars doubt that anything like this story happened at all. The Gospel of Matthew is our only source for it, for one thing, and it may have been inspired by Isaiah 60, verse 3. The nations shall come to your light, and kings to the brightness of your rising. Or it may also have been inspired by Numbers 24:17. I see him, but not now. I behold him, but not nigh. A star shall come forth out of Jacob, and a scepter shall rise out of Israel. Another reason scholars doubt this incident is that while Jesus was probably born between the year now known as 7 BCE and Herod's death early in 4 BCE, astronomers have been unable to find a celestial phenomenon that answers to the description of the Star of Bethlehem, which suddenly appears, is instantly recognizable to the naked eye as not belonging there previously, and which stops on cue. What's more, ancient records are similarly unhelpful. Whatever the Star of Bethlehem is supposed to have been, the Babylonians and the Chinese apparently didn't see it at the time either. One of the striking aspects of the story, though, is that when the Magi turn up in Jerusalem, nobody in the city has any idea that something has happened, let alone that a new king has been born. The Magi were a caste of Zoroastrian priests and scholars. This is reinforced by the gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. They would also have kindled a fire, and astrology was one of their arts. So it may well be that the only place that they would have seen a star heralding the birth of a new world ruler was on a horoscope. That would explain why nobody has been able to identify it as a novel astronomical event then or now. This is the thesis of astronomer Michael Molnar's book, The Star of Bethlehem, The Legacy of the Magi. Molnar, who has read the surviving Hellenistic treatises on astrology, says we should be looking for a favorable configuration involving Jupiter, the planet of rulers, in the sign of not Pisces, but Aries, which governed Syria-Palestine, including Judea and the Jews. The Greek term traditionally translated in the East, en te Anatole, literally means in the rising. It can mean in the direction of the rising of the sun, i.e. the east, or at the rising of the star, or in the dawn. In Hellenistic astrology, the phrase specifically refers to a planet rising above the horizon before the sun as a morning star. Molnar notes that the 17th of April, 6 BCE, was the only date between 10 BCE and 5 CE when Jupiter did this in Aries. Using the rules specified by writers at the time, this was also the date of the most favorable planetary configurations in which all the visible astrological planets, including the sun and moon, were grouped in a stellium, particularly on the ascendant, dawn, or the midheaven, noon, and they were all centered on Aries. This would have indicated Judea to the Magi and sent them to Jerusalem, assuming, of course, that there is anything to the story historically. Molnar explains that the language used to describe the star's behavior reflects astronomical motion. The fact that the star is moving to the west and not to the east indicates what the astronomers call retrograde motion, which is caused by the fact that the orbital speed and path of the Earth around the Sun sometimes makes one or more of the planets appear to move backward across the sky. When a planet stops retrograde motion and resumes direct or forward motion, it appears to stand still, which is called stationing. This is, of course, a possible explanation of the Star of Bethlehem standing still over the location of the Christ child. Now, let me state quite clearly at this point that I am not endorsing the astrological beliefs held by the Magi and so many others at the time of Jesus' birth and for many years afterwards. What I am saying is that one of the things the story of the wise men shows us is that God meets us where we are and uses what we know, what we think we know, what we believe, what we understand, to draw us toward himself. And that intersects with probably the most important aspect of the story of the Magi. Triad-born author O. Henry, who spent the first 20 years of his life over in Guilford County as William Sidney Porter, used this passage as one of the inspirations for one of his best known and best loved short stories, in which a young husband and wife at Christmas each sacrifice their most treasured possession in order to buy a gift to adorn the most treasured possession of the other. Why? Because each loves the other more than the material objects, however prized those may have been. The way of the cross doesn't only involve self-sacrifice and suffering, it also involves selfless giving. In last week's message, I quoted Scrooge's nephew to the effect that Christmas time was the only time he knew of in the entire year when people actually treat each other the way we're all supposed to behave all of the time. The wise men's quest was to find the baby Jesus in a specific moment in history. Ours is to follow the Christ within. George Fox famously remarked that, quote, "The Lord had said unto me that if I did but set up one in the same spirit the prophets and apostles were in that gave forth the scriptures, he or she should shake all the country in their profession of faith 10 miles about them." We need to keep it firmly in mind that the text of the Bible does not expect the covenant community to be perfect in thought and deed. Rather, it especially hails those who reorient their lives to fulfill divine will. God makes a habit of choosing not the elite, but the marginal. The first annunciation comes not to Abraham, but to the Egyptian slave Hagar. The law and the prophets express divine concern for the disenfranchised and the condemnation of power. Psalms speaks of divine forgiveness. To be in relationship with this mysterious deity does not mean that all is milk and honey. It means being aware that actions have consequences, that easy answers are not forthcoming, and that divine support does not compromise free will. To put it another way, the mere fact that we can see the star doesn't relieve us of the responsibility to actually make the journey. I leave you then with the words of this song, which was originally written for Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year, although it applies equally here. May this be a year of love and kindness. May strangers come to be friends. May truth and compassion always guide us. Amen. May this be a year of hope and healing for all of those in need. May all of our deeds be a blessing. Amen. A new year, a good year, a chance to start all over. A new year, a sweet year, a chance to bring us closer. May this be a year of selfless giving. May this be a year of peace. And may we forgive and be forgiven. Amen. A new year, a good year, a chance to start all over. A new year, a sweet year, a chance to bring us closer. A new year, a good year, a chance to start all over. A new year, a sweet year, a chance to bring us closer. Closer to the ones we love, a world that we can be proud of, long as there are stars above. There comes a new year.